I want to thank Bob Dobos for being here to present our webinar. Bob, this is the newest newest focus team, soil interpretations focus team. And so here's your chance to get the word out about this new opportunity for folks. Bob, I'm going to turn the webinar over to you.
I'm Bob Dobos. I'm working soil interpretations and have for quite some time. And I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy day or your lunch hour or whatever to sit and listen to me talk and have a chat. You know, Sean says it's the newest focus team, but really we've been doing this for quite some time. It's just being a little more formal now than what it has been in the past. Let's talk about interpretations. And the first question I always have, you know, is what are interpretations? And if you're not familiar or need a refresher, interpretations are just models, generally fairly simple models, which predict the impact of soil properties and site properties on land use. But land use is kind of a, you know, it's a topic that's a little more encompassing, because we look at things like production agriculture, maybe high tunnels, but we also get into habitats or partial descriptors of habitats for animals like a tortoise or the soil-borne pathogen, although I don't think that the coronavirus has any soil dependency in its life cycle, and so it's out of our reach for being an interpretable soil-borne pathogen. Soil also is a sink for atmospheric carbon dioxide, and some soils do that better than others. The sink for radioactive material, and some soils do that better than others. Home site development, of course. And so I've generalized interpretations into a species or entity non-specific interaction with soil and or landscapes, just to make things you know, more confusing than they already are. You know, other interpretations you're used to seeing, maybe not thinking about them as in terms of interpretations or prime farmland, land capability class and subclass. One of my favorites, and Tony Jenkins' hydrologic soils group, K and T, hydric soils, highly erodible land. Those are all interpretations. And so what's the problem, you might ask? And I'll tell you what the problem is these days, finally, in my career, soil survey and soils data is finally getting the respect that it should have had for, you know, decades on a national and worldwide global scene. But we have a problem in this country anyways, and I'm sure probably in other countries as well, is the increased value of and usage of soil survey data, but we'd have fewer and fewer people that can interpret the data. And so we have a pretty big need for interpretive products, crop productivity indices, and a lot of other different things we address. And the usefulness of the interpreted data is pretty well known, pretty well documented. And there's a lot of more models that we need to develop. One of my biggest priorities currently is all of the soil-based conservation practice standards. And there's a big, and a lot of interest for soil mass movement interpretations, liquefaction, because as much as we don't want to think about it, eventually we're going to get the big one, you know, another new Madrid kind of, which I think will be much more devastating than anything in California. A new Madrid event would cause some severe problems because we're not ready for them in that part of the world. Methyl mercury production in soil, productivity indices for tropical crops, just to name a few. So there's a really big backlog or load of topics that can be addressed by soil survey interpretations. And so we've noticed that there's a trend away from a more centralized thing like the Soil Survey Center to a more distributed methodology for getting even national level work done. That's part and parcel of the focus teams. A lot of the function of the focus teams is kind of just in reality realizing that national staff, Soil Survey Center, and the technical support centers to an extent as well, those staffs are contracting. And that's just a reality, but we'll have to adapt to that. And so there's been a lot of teams in the Soil and Plant Science Division, except for a formalized interpretations focus team. We've been doing parts of the function for a long time, but now I'm going to try to pull the various pieces and functions of soil survey interpretations more or less into one coordination. States and regions will continue to do their work, of course, but I think this will also be an opportunity for states and regions to have some value-added efforts from other folks to be able to get their work done. And a little bit of that nasty word, quid pro quo, if you let us borrow your people, we'll get you a product. Because the center just doesn't have the staff. And the staff that is here, well, I don't like to admit it, but we're getting old, and if it hadn't been for this coronavirus thing, well, I'd be gone within a couple of years, but I think now I'm going to be forced to work for a while longer against my will, indentured, well, no, it's not indentured servitude. But anyways, we don't have enough people to get the work done on a reasonable time scale, and it doesn't seem like we're ever going to build staff back, not like the 15 or 20 people or 15 people used to be on the interpretation staff when I started here 15 years ago. It's just not going to happen. And so we proposed quite some time ago, well, a few months ago anyways, that we would have a focus team, interpretations focus team. But what's different now is we'll have a mandate. We'll have word from up the food chain that, yes, we're going to do this. And that frees up staffing to be able to get things done, or at least and enables us to be able to tap into staff for all the various levels of interpretive work. And we need to have an interdisciplinary group, which includes the ecologic people, foresters, engineers, biologists, range specialists, the whole spectrum of sciences that we commonly associate with soil surveys. And it'd be okay to drag in some mycologists and a few other microbiologist types to really build a good cadre of people to work on interpretations. And I'm not saying that we have to work for hours and days and days and days, but getting somebody's effort for a couple hours can have quite an effect. So we want to use people to develop new interpretations, and there'll be a group that will help in maintaining the existing interpretations, because that's a non-trivial task. And also, one of my things, what I'm really interested in doing, is enhancing the documentation of the present and future interpretations, because that's something that I don't think that we've ever had the methodology to do very well. But I think that methodology exists now, but we haven't been able to really tap into it yet. So the focus team will be coordinated from the National Soil Survey Center. I was going to say here, but this is my office in my suburban bunker in Lincoln, so I'm not at the center right now. But it doesn't have to be the Soil Survey Center. It could be DC. It could be any of the 3 regional tech centers. It doesn't matter. What is important is if we draw talent from various offices across the country to be able to have a broad spectrum of abilities, passions, and time too. So I envision 4 distinct functions or work groups as like this. We have a science group. It kind of starts with the science. We accumulate the science, reviewing the literature, deciding on thresholds. It's basically what we do in the class called the Science of Interpretations, and I think many of you have been through that class. We try to make that, an interesting class, and I think it generally is, because there's a spectrum of people involved, and there's no NRCS involved, no National Soil Information System work, although I think for current project, we will need to work within the confines of NRCS at least until we can get a better system. And I think what's really interesting about this group is that anybody can participate, because we're all experts in soils. We have a diverse professional backgrounds, diverse passions, and so we can probably better explore what needs to go into an interpretation, in this kind of a forum. And we can also engage scientists from BLM, Forest Service, any other government agency, also land-grant universities, and also people in the private sector, or even perhaps a citizen scientist participating in developing the criteria for interpretations. That's things that we haven't really formally done, involving outside groups very well, except for our usual agencies and universities. But I would like to try to do more of that, more crowdsourcing of this part of the interpretive process. And so we have a science group gets together. I don't know how many it would be, probably 5 or 6 people, to develop a criteria table. And if you've had the Science of Interpretations class, you've seen things like this. And as a matter of fact, you maybe have even seen this particular example, which I forgot that I had, really, because hops are something that are becoming more and more important in these trying times. But that would be the product that the science group would create. And then they would pass that product off to the model design development and maintenance group. Now this is the people that are a little more specialized. They would work within the rule-based fuzzy logic system and be able to have some facility with CVIR, which could be a foreign language to a lot of people, but not to everyone. And so this would, we'd be able to tie into the people that this is their passion. There's a few of us, uber geeks out there that, we'd rather do this than sleep and eat. And so it would be a good outlet for some people to, their creative abilities and their things they like to do. It's just like a big puzzle. And so they would work in this environment. Some of you have probably seen this slide too, but this is the NRCS interpretation approach currently with the rule-based fuzzy logic system. And I'm not going to read through all that. You can kind of see that. Maybe, I suppose this will be available somewhere as a PDF that you can look at these slides later. But that would be the product that the design and develop team would create. And then we'd send that off, products from that, to a testing group. And I envision the testing group being a lot of state soil scientists, the assistant state soil scientists, and the resource soil scientists, people that really have a good understanding of the impact of soil properties on land and use in their areas. Because you need to be able to pick up what's going wrong or what's going right and understand that within your context, within the sphere that you work. And you could also be able to pick up peculiarities and inconsistencies in the data, hopefully not too many voids, because we've been working really hard on filling in the nulls lately with the efforts of Kyle Stevens and all of the regional directors and their staffs trying to fill in the data voids. And so on one of the products, I would think that you would want to look at a map or a table. And so this is a map of some interpretation called primary productivity. I don't know if anybody's even heard of that one. But you're looking at a river valley in central Pennsylvania, Center County, and you see these brown areas, orange areas down along the river. I think, well, what's going on there? And, why are those areas of low productivity? And that would pique my interest right away to see those things that look inconsistent. And I would wonder, what is this? Is this just peculiar or is this wrong? And so I would be able to query those polygons and find out what soil they are or what soil they aren't, and be able to track down whether it's something went screwy with, a property script, or an evaluation was inverted, or what was going on. And so that's the value, I think, of being able to map interpretive output and look at it in a scale that you can understand. And so the next part, once an interpretation is settled down and we're not changing a bunch of rules and changing stuff around too much, we're pretty sure that this is the model we want, then we'd pass pass everything we've done so far to the documentation group, which would assemble and publish the metadata. And there's a lot of different metadata that we look at. There's the Web Soil Survey Rule and Report Manager, which some of you have seen, and some of you have developed reports for and rule descriptions for that. And there's also the rule descriptions in NRCS that you can go through, and it's a pretty detailed, dry, and thoroughly not very entertaining or even hardly informative look at how a rule is put together, because it's all text in the NRCS environment. We really need visuals as well as text to be able to really come close to describing an interpretation, how the rule works. And so that's why I want to have these, a pamphlet or a glossy brochure for each interpretation available somewhere associated with Web Soil Survey, so that a user where he or she was curious and wanted to know more, could click on a link and find out more than they really want to know, but in a format that they could actually learn it if they wanted to, which is something we really don't have now, not central and not formal and not coordinated. I also want interpretive products and model descriptions and results to appear in a lot more scientific journals of some sort. I had an article that we sent from folks in Florida today about gopher tortoise, and you read through that, we've been working on and mapping gopher tortoises for years, and the data is published on Web Soil Survey, and yet that work that we've done was not referenced in an article on gopher tortoises in Central Florida. And I thought that that was not a good thing. It shows that even if the person had looked, the authors had looked for our work, I'm not sure they would have found it in the scientific literature. Or even if it was given as a talk at a regional conference or a National Soil Survey conference, that information ends up being searchable, and it ends up being something that people can see if they search for it. And even these webinars are searchable, and people can find them if you search for a topic. And so perhaps even a webinar for each interpretation would make it so that if somebody looks for gopher tortoise or looks for radon in soils or looks for coccidioides, they would be able to find something that NRCS has done. And they, well, I didn't get off that soapbox or rant. Stop ranting. Stop ranting. And here's an example from Connecticut of a nice glossy interpretation rule description that Debbie Sarabian has done. And there's some of these, there's quite a few of them really laying around, but they're not in a place generally where a user can get to them. And I want to change that. And so hopefully, parsing this work, a large number of people, relatively large number of people, in the hopes that many hands will make light work to keep us from being even more overwhelmed than what we are already. And I think one of the selling points for this, I hope, is it will be able to play to the passions of the staff, because some people really like the science part. And I think that's the most difficult part of interpretations, getting the science settled down. And I think it's the funnest part. You have the most interaction with all the different disciplines. It's the most political of all of them. And I think that it's just a forum which needs a lot of people in it, a lot of passionate people. The design and development part, you need to have somebody that's pretty proficient in the NASA's end of it. But the upshot is that we're going to be able, I hope, to play to the talents, strengths, and passions of the staff involved. And we want the process to be as inclusive as possible. It requires buy-in and permissions for managers and supervisors, because the time commitment will be fairly significant. Just how significant, I haven't really quite been able to pin down yet. And I think that will vary from model to model. And training will be provided and has been provided to maintain a continuity of practitioners, because the people that are doing it now are getting pretty old. And so we need to keep the capacity, build the capacity, more people being able to do this and be able to maintain the techniques, knowledge transfer from generation to generation, if you will, to keep really the core tenet of soil survey, which is interpreting the data and making it useful to the people, to keep that function of the soil survey running strong. And so more of the mechanics, the devil, of course, being in the details. I want to find some people to be the point for each of the 4 sub-teams. And I'd rather have volunteers, but we can work around and get voluntold if we have to. So think about it. And we haven't really done this yet, but I think that an announcement in Gov Delivery will say, hey, we need people to work on the science of this particular interpretation. So we'll have a teleconference and to set things up and see how we can work from there. We have 3 classes on AgLearn that are presented fairly regularly. Actually, we've had all three of them in the past few months. The Understanding Interpretations class, the Science of Interpretations class, and just a couple of weeks ago we had an iteration of the Design and Development class. And one thing that had an epiphany is any team activity is reportable as technical soil service, because there's a kind or type of technical soil service called developer validated interpretations. And so that makes things a little more palatable for the folks that are in the soil survey offices, in MLRA offices, because I know that you need to do a certain amount of this technical soil service work. And I think it would be great if you did that. And one thing I was not able to figure out how to get into the talk anywhere because it wouldn't highlight as an URL. But there is a Soil Survey Interpretations Focus Team web page associated with the NRCS Focus Team's website, so that you can get a little bit more information and some contact information, see who the people I've talked to so far are. But yeah, so that's the cordially invited to help with this effort. I think it's if nothing else, it's a good way to add diversity to your background. Hopefully a win-win, because it'll help us all to be more valuable as employees. It will also help to get the soil survey more of the attention that I think it deserves. And in making the soil survey get more attention, that means that it's going to better serve the people that have paid for it for the past 100 and some odd years. And so I want to thank you for listening. Consider, if you will, participating in this effort, and any questions.
All right, I'll just remind folks to put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll call those up and answer those questions as they come in. So Bob, we do have a question from Glenn, and he asks, is there a process for testing and peer review of interpretations within the focus team?
Yes, that's really what the validation team is going to be all about. The peer reviewing and testing, using several different methodologies. I think, you can graph stuff and have plots. I like quite often these days, since you can do it with gridded Sergo and Soil Data Access Facility, when I'm working on an interpretation, I will extract the data that I'm going to look at and map it using a CONUS G-Sergo. So I can see where there's holes in it, where it looks funny, if it looks quote unquote right. And so that's kind of some of the process. Nothing real formal yet, no cookbook. So I think that one of the things that we'll be doing is writing cookbooks to do this, just to kind of get the steps, in a sequence.
All right, another question from Charles. Are there plans to reach out to state technical specialists and others outside of the Soil and Plant Science Division to participate in the focus team?
Yes. I think it's imperative that we get the agronomists and biologists from the states to work on this, because they also are, they've got a great deal of knowledge tucked away for their areas where they work. And so I think that's important to engage as many people as possible. Not quite crowdsourcing, because they're within the NRCS umbrella, but kind of like crowdsourcing.
And those of you that have taken the Science of Interpretations the last few years have heard me say that, if you want to go fast with your interpretation, you work by yourself, but if you want your interpretation to go far, you work with other people. Bob,
That's right.
I wonder if you'd be willing to talk about some of the interpretations that were developed in the Designing and Developing Soil Interpretations course.
I'm glad you asked that, Sean. A few years ago, we had an interpretation done for ground-based solar panel arrays. And we made that interpretation in the science class, where we got the criteria, and then we codified it, if you will, made rules for it in the design and development class. And then I touched it up very little and snuck it onto into the web soil survey queue. And that's something that many of you might not realize offhand, because if you're not a NRCS user, you'll never see that there's different NRCS sites that own interpretations, rules, if you will. One of them is NSSC Pangea, and everything, all of the primary rules on NSSC Pangea are by default exported when the data is refreshed to Web Soil Survey. That's by default. Those are for supporting national programs, so they go. There's another NRCS site called NSSC Regional Interpretations. And these are interpretations that are not national in scope, but we've designed and developed and maintained them at the Soil Survey Center. Those are things like the gopher tortoise, a lot of VLM interpretations, solar panel arrays. But the thing with those is that the state soil scientist, or his or her designee, selects which ones of those, if any, that he or she wants to export at a data refresh. And so some of them don't go. Like some states will export the solar panel, ground-based solar panel arrays, other states don't. And it was interesting that I had a request not too long ago from a person that was doing the environmental impact statement for a solar farm in Pennsylvania, but unfortunately Pennsylvania had not exported that particular rule. And so I tried to run that using the transactional database, but it just never works that well. It's best to have the things exported.
So there's a question here from Ron that he's active in the biochar policy, and there's many hundreds of amateurs doing biochar tests, often with soil tests. Could this group be of help?
We'd have to do some research. It'd have to be, I've heard of biochar, and I know there's a lot of big claims for it, but I don't know much about it myself. And so if there's other people out there, then we can certainly entertain something like that.
All right. And Alan asks, when validating and testing interpretations, are there set accuracy standards?
That's a good question, because as much as I've looked and tried, vigorously to find, even the big-time rule-based fuzzy logic users like Alex McBratney and those people, there's never any statistics like a confidence interval or an error measurement associated with a fuzzy number. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I can guess it's because there's a certain amount of, the fuzziness is in the thresholds. You're not really certain if it's 14.2 or it should be 14.5, or maybe it was 13.9. There's fuzziness in the thresholds. Not necessarily uncertainty, but fuzziness. Ambiguity is a better word. And so I think that we can certainly say that, a soil is absolutely not good for use, or, limited for use, absolutely not limited for use. The middle is kind of interesting because, we would like to be able to think of the fuzzy numbers as representing a degree of limitation or suitability, if the case may be. And so that gives rise to an array. Your soils or components will have one soil will array a little higher or lower than another. And I think that's what we try to focus on is if I think that Ernest is better than Buchanan, then hopefully my array will show that. Although that's going to be a difficult thing because those two soils are essentially the same. Anyways. Yeah, but accuracy standards, it's a lot of gut feelings, and it's really you're playing into the being able to take advantage or having to take advantage of the knowledge of the people that are looking at the interpretation. It's the results. I don't know if that answers your question, but it sure was long.
There's a question here in the chat from Matthew on industrial hemp, and did anything come of it?
Yes, we have a nice model for industrial hemp, and it just needs, I just need to look at it a little bit, and I think we'll send some data out for other people to look at just to try to do some validation and testing. But that's really where we are with that one. Is all the ones that we did already are validation and testing. The ones that we just punched through the design and develop class. And so that will be interesting to see how we can have a nice process for doing that.
And Bob, I think those interpretations that we worked on in that latest class were the industrial hemp suitability, southern high bush blueberry suitability, and a field waste stacking area site suitability.
Oh, yeah, very, very nice technique of not putting any state names involved with that. Very good. Yeah, those are the three we did.
All right, well, that looks like we've exhausted our questions. So thank you, Bob, for your time and effort to make this presentation. And thanks to all the participants for joining in. We hope you found this information beneficial. We had more than 150 people join today's webinar. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of this webinar will be available on our Soil Survey Center YouTube channel within a few business days. So feel free to let your colleagues know about this training opportunity. And this concludes our webinar presentation.
All right, thanks, Sean. Be safe out there, guys.